Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are strapping in for a look at a pretty serious machine. It's the VIXIA high-end custom water-cooled gaming PC, the VXS-100B.
Yeah, this one's interesting. Its position is more than just parts in a box.
Exactly. So you, our listener, you probably want to know, does it actually deliver performance, style, reliability, all that high-end promise? Our job is to sift through the reviews, the specs, and figure out what you're really getting with a custom water-cooled build like this.
And it's important to frame it right off the bat. The sources we looked at, they don't just talk specs. They talk about a complete premium experience.
Okay.
The language used is things like dominant games and impeccable craftsmanship. So the bar is set, well, pretty high. It's not just about FPS.
Right. Okay, so let's unpack that because these things aren't cheap. When you step up from a standard build to something like this custom water-cooled showpiece, what are you actually paying that premium for? Is it just looks? Is there a real performance gain? Or is it, the custom loop tax?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the sources seem to suggest it's maybe less about peak performance gain and more about the quality of life stuff.
How so?
Well, the components themselves are top tier. Sure,
Okay.
we'll get into that. But it's how that performance is delivered. Think stable temps, low noise. That's where the investment shows. It's like a factory sports car versus one meticulously tuned.
Gotcha. Okay, let's start with the first impression then. The aesthetics. Every review mentions it. Minimalist black case looks very sophisticated, not overly flashy.
Right, no crazy angles or anything. But the inside, that's the visual focus.
Yeah, that water cooling loop, the clear tubing, the RGB coolant, cables that just seem to vanish. It looks, well, engineered.
And VIXIA leans into that. The cooling is the main aesthetic feature. It's routed carefully. It looks almost like industrial art. But crucially, it's not just for show.
It's tied to function.
Exactly. A proper custom loop like this with reservoirs, radiators, the pump, it moves heat way more effectively than your standard air cooler or even those sealed AIO liquid coolers most people use.
So better thermals. Why does that matter so much for, say, a serious gamer, beyond just making parts last longer?
Performance stability. That's the key. When your CPU or GPU gets too hot, it slows itself down to avoid damage. Thermal throttling, right? A system like this keeps things much cooler, even after hours of intense gaming. So those chips, they can maintain their maximum boost speeds consistently. No throttling, just smooth performance.
Okay, and this is where it gets interesting for me. The noise. I always thought custom loops meant loud pumps, fans blasting.
Yeah, that could be true for cheaper or less optimized setups. But here, the sources really emphasize the quiet.
How?
Well, because the large radiators dissipate heat so efficiently, the fans don't need to spin like crazy. Even under full load, reviewers say it's just this low ambient hum.
Not the jet engine sound you get from some air-cooled rig.
Exactly, which is huge if you game in a living room or share your space or just value quiet focus. It's a major quality of life thing.
And the build quality seems to match that attention to detail. Top-notch craftsmanship is the phrase used. No loose bits, no cable mess.
Yeah.
Looking at the photos, that cable management alone must take ages.
Oh, absolutely. That's a big part of the cost. You're paying for skilled labor, for precision. A standard build is about speed on the line. This is about flawless execution.
Routing every cable perfectly, leak testing the loop. That's the craftsmanship cost, separate from the parts themselves.
Definitely. It gives you that peace of mind, too. Less chance of something going wrong because of a rushed assembly job.
Okay, so style, silence, build quality check. Let's get into the engine room. What's powering this thing? We've got an Intel Core i5-14600K CPU.
Yep, latest generation.
And 32 gigs of DDR5 RAM running at 6,000 megahertz. Now, hold on. An i5 in a high-end, premium build feels a bit counterintuitive. Why not an i7 or even an i9? Is that a cost cut?
That's a really sharp question, and the answer seems to be about balance and the target use case. The i5-14600K, with its mix of performance cores and efficiency cores, is actually incredibly fast for gaming. Seriously fast. The thing is, if they put in, say, a much more powerful GPU, like an RTX 4080 or 4090...
Then you might need the i7 or i9 to keep up.
Exactly. Especially at lower resolutions or very high refresh rates, you could hit a CPU bottleneck. But VIXIA paired this i5 with an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4070 Elite.
Ah, okay, so the pairing matters.
It's crucial. At 1440p resolution, which is really the sweet spot for an RTX 4070, the GPU is almost always going to be the component working hardest, so when setting the performance limit.
So the i5-14600K is plenty powerful enough to feed the 4070 without holding it back at that resolution.
Precisely. It ensures the GPU can run at its full potential. Spending extra hundreds on an i7 probably wouldn't give you noticeably more frames per second in this specific configuration. It's actually a really smart balanced choice. Saves costs where it won't impact the target experience.
That makes a lot of sense, efficient power allocation. And the RAM 32GB DDR5 at 6000 MHz. Why is DDR5 important for you, the listener?
Well, DDR5 is the latest standard. Faster data speeds, more bandwidth than the older DDR4. It really helps modern CPUs like that 14E600K breathe, especially when you're multitasking or loading complex game assets.
And 6000 MHz is a good speed for that Intel chip.
Yeah, it's a well-regarded sweet spot for performance and stability with Intel's current architecture. Helps everything feel snappy.
Okay, speaking of snappy, let's talk about that GPU, the RTX 4070 Elite. What kind of performance are we really talking about in demanding games? The reviews mention titles like Cyberpunk 2077, Starfield.
Yeah, the 4070 is a beast for 1440p. You're looking at really smooth frame rates in those demanding titles. And critically, it supports all the latest NVIDIA tech, DLSS 3 ray tracing.
Let's break down DLSS 3 quickly. For someone not deep in the tech, what does it actually do for your gaming experience?
Okay, so DLSS deep learning supersampling uses AI to boost performance. Version 3 is particularly clever. The GPU renders the game at a lower internal resolution, saving power, and then AI intelligently upscales the image to look sharp at your target resolution, like 1440p.
Okay, upscaling.
But the big thing in DLSS 3 is frame generation. The AI actually creates entirely new frames and inserts them between the normally rendered ones.
Whoa, okay, so it's literally adding extra frames that weren't there before.
Yeah. It can, in some games, almost double your perceived frame rate. It makes things look incredibly smooth, even with ray tracing effects turned way up. So the 4070 handles 1440p like a champ, and with DLSS 3, it can even push into light 4K gaming pretty comfortably.
That sounds impressive. And it's not just for gaming, right? The source mentioned GPU rendering for creative work.
Absolutely. The 4070 has a decent amount of VRAM 12GB of fast GDDR6X, and its specialized cores, the RT Tensor cores, accelerate tasks in creative apps. Think video editing in Premiere or DaVinci Resolve for 3D work in Blender. It's a really strong hybrid machine. Powerful foreplay, capable for work.
Good versatility. And rounding out the core hardware, storage is a 1TB PCIe 4.0 and NVMe and .2 SSD. Translation. Super fast.
Oh yeah. Boot times in seconds. Game levels load almost instantly. That PCIe 4.0 interface is key, much faster than older SATA drives. Everything feels really responsive.
But only 1 TB. That seems a bit tight for a premium machine these days.
Yeah, that's the one potential catch the sources point out. It is super fast storage, but 1 TB fills up incredibly quickly.
Install Windows, a couple of big AAA games like Call of Duty or, Baldur's Gate 3.
And you're already running low on space.
Yeah.
So if you're a heavy gamer with a large library or a creator working with big video files, you'll almost certainly need to budget for adding a second drive pretty soon. Maybe a larger, cheaper SATA SSD for games, or another M.2 if you need the speed.
So speed over capacity was the choice there.
Seems like it. It keeps the initial build super responsive, but expandability is likely needed down the line.
Okay, let's talk about that expandability and just general connectivity. How future-proof is this setup? The sources mentioned plenty of USB ports, fast Wi-Fi.
Right, good I/O is covered. But the real future-proofing comes from the platform choices. Using DDR5 RAM, having that PCIe 4.0 interface for the SSD.
These are current standards.
Exactly. You're not buying into tech that's already on its way out. The motherboard chipset likely supports even faster future components too. So you have upgrade paths down the line without needing a complete system overhaul immediately. That longevity helps justify the initial price tag.
Okay, so it's sleek, it's quiet, it's powerful for its target, 1440p gaming, creative work, and it's built on a modern platform. Let's bring it back to the price. It's definitely premium. For someone listening who only cares about the absolute highest frames per second for their money, is this VIXIA the best value? Or could they get, say, a slightly better GPU in an air-cooled build for the same cash?
And that's the crucial trade-off, isn't it? The analysis is pretty clear. If your single overriding goal is maximizing frames per dollar, you could probably build or buy an air-cooled system with maybe an RTX 4070 Ti for similar money.
Right.
But that's not really who VIXIA is targeting with this machine. This is for the buyer who values the entire experience, the quiet operation, the flawless build quality, the aesthetics.
So the premium price isn't just for the parts list. It's paying for the silence, the look, the reliability of that expert assembly.
Precisely. It's the labor, the thermal engineering that leads to sustained performance without sounding like a hairdryer, the meticulous attention to detail. The source material sums it up well. You're paying for a refined, complete package that is powerful, but also quiet and, frankly, beautiful to look at. And arguably, that superior cooling means it might actually run faster over extended sessions than an air-cooled equivalent because it won't throttle.
Makes sense. And the final verdict from the source reflects that focus, right? What was the score?
The solid 9 out of 10. The conclusion was it's a stunning blend of power, cooling, and style. Ideal for users who demand that smooth performance, but also want quiet operation and a machine that looks as premium as it performs.
Okay, so let's quickly recap the main takeaways from this deep dive. The VIXIA VXS-100B killer aesthetics, genuinely excellent cooling leading to very quiet operation, and really well-balanced power with the i5 14600K and RTX 4070 for superb 1440p gaming and strong creative performance.
And that core idea from the sources keeps coming back. The price buys you a complete experience. It blends those hard numbers, frame rates, clock speeds with the softer stuff like the low noise and the visual design.
Right.
Which leads to a really interesting final thought for you, the listener, to consider. When you're looking at high-end tech like this, how do you weigh those things? How important are the measurable metrics, the benchmarks, the specs compared to those intangible factors? The quietness, the design, maybe even just the peace of mind from knowing it was built with extreme care, that impeccable craftsmanship. What ultimately tips the scale for you when making that big purchase?
Something to definitely think about for your next upgrade. That wraps up our deep dive on the VIXIA VXS-100B.